Hi everyone, my name's Steve, otherwise known as That Pen Bloke. I want to do these video series to answer a lot of questions that I get asked frequently about my pen turning, that sort of stuff. Whether I'm at markets, on Instagram, on Facebook, that sort of stuff. I get asked these things regularly. So I thought, come on, make a few videos, see how things go. Maybe, I can share a few tips and tricks that I've learnt. Now, this is not the be-all and end-all of how to make pens. Everybody that I know, that I've met over the time, has a slightly different way of doing things. I'm certainly no expert. I've learnt a lot of this through trial and error. So, and the same thing, I've watched a lot of videos, I've talked to a lot of people, and I've just developed my own style over the time that I've been doing this. So I'm hoping that this will impart some of my joy for making a pen, the pleasure that I get out of it, and the pleasure that I get from seeing people use my pens that I make and that sort of thing, and just the challenges that go into it. So a little bit about my background. I'm not a carpenter by any means. I don't class myself as a wood turner. In fact, up until about 3 years ago, I think I've only touched a lathe maybe 2-3 times prior to that. Once being back in high school, and then once I had an old lathe that was given to me. You've probably seen them if you've been looking on Facebook Marketplace. There's all sorts of brands. They're old. Ryobi made them branded one for a while. Craftsman. There's a few other things. They're quite old, quite big, bit cumbersome. You can pick them up for about anywhere from $50 to $100. My advice there is don't do that. They are not worth it for this type of stuff. They cannot be upgraded realistically to do this sort of thing. You can do much better. And that's what I'll pass on as well. The other thing is, my background is I'm a heavy vehicle mechanic. Work on diesel trucks, all that sort of stuff, trucks, trailers, four-wheel drives, all that sort of stuff. I've been in the automotive industry pretty much most of my life, whether it be in the manufacturing, as a panel beater, spray painter for a while, and all that sort of stuff, even motorcycles. So really had no background in this at all. Now, I picked this up realistically as a hobby to do, and it was not going to be anything more than a hobby when I first started looking at it. And I stumbled across it by accident, really. Sitting in my living room, watching TV, being bored, because TV gets a bit boring after a while. Wanted to be creative, couldn't do anything art-wise, that sort of stuff. So was looking for something. I just wanted to do something with my hands. Something that was quick, easy to turn around, didn't take too long, that sort of stuff. And I just happened to come across this video by of a guy by the name of RJB Woodturner. Anybody that's in the pen industry or has been turning pens for a while knows him, has come across him. He's got an extensive video library on YouTube on how to make pens and that sort of stuff, which is great. He's in America though, so it's a little bit different. Some of the things they can do in America we can't get hold of in Australia, or it's out of our price ranges. So again, that's what I'm hoping this series that I'm putting out will give you some of the local supplies or the local stuff that you can get hold of that's a little bit different to what they have in the US. So from there, I looked into getting it. Needed to upgrade my lathe because the one I had, as I said, wasn't really good enough. I had some tools, some chisels and that, so I wasn't too worried about that. Didn't really know how much more I was going to need until I really started looking into it and investigating. So got all that. Now I've been doing this for a while. Found when I first started looking 3 years ago, there wasn't a lot of suppliers out there on the market, or they were really hard to find. Thankfully, that's changed a lot in the last 3 years. There's a couple of new suppliers in the market that have come into the market in the last couple of years, or expanded. They were probably in the market, I couldn't find them. but they've expanded a lot over the last couple of years. There's a couple of Facebook groups that have grown huge over the last couple of years as well. So that's a good, great knowledge base. Everything's exciting, and it's just growing from strength to strength. There's more and more people take it on, get involved in this hobby. So I'll try and cover some of them as well as we go through. But I guess what you're here for is to learn what you need to get started, and that's what we'll try and cover in these first few videos. What I believe is the best way to get started from my point of view. You know, how I started may not be the best way, but it's probably the cheapest way to get into the market or get into turning them as a hobbyist without going too big, too quick. Alright. So probably the first thing you're going to need is a lathe. If you don't have a lathe, you can make pens without them, you can hand carve them. I know a couple of people that hand carve pens. There, you can cast them in resin, you can get a silicone mold to cast them. But I'm a pen turner, I turn them on a lathe, it gives you a lot more flexibility, that sort of stuff. So that's what we're going to cover. So the first thing, you know, as I said, you're going to need is a lathe. Now, this is a lathe I use. I picked this up, as I said, about 3 years ago. It was about $350 from Carbotech. You can still get them through Carbotech. They've jumped up in price a little bit. I looked today, they're about $400. This is not anything super, you know, there's nothing exciting about this lathe. It's got a motor, it turns a couple of pulleys with a belt, you can change the speed with the belt, but it does everything that I need, and it pretty much does everything. Yes, I'd love to upgrade, and I probably will somewhere down the track, but at this stage I can still do everything I want on this lathe. To give you the basics, so down underneath here is your motor, electric motor, just plugs into your 10 amp power point, just like any other appliance. Drives a spindle up here, everything plugs into here. So we've got these, I'll explain them. They just push into here. You've got your tail stock, that helps to hold your work in place nice and tight. And then you've got your tool rest here, which is all adjustable. You don't have a lot of room, a lot of bed space on the lathe. It's quite small. It fits on my toolbox workbench. It's probably a little bit high, but I've gotten used to working at that height, and it feels comfortable for me. Again, you know, buying a lathe, you need to get something that you can afford. If you go into most tool places, they won't try and talk you so much into buying something you don't need, but they will show you around and show you some of the things. Be practical with your lathe. You know, that ideally, if you can get something that has an electric speed control, it'll have a little dial down here by the switches somewhere that you can control the actual speed. It's worth the extra money if you can afford it. But it is a bit of a price jump when you go from this lathe where you adjust your belt on different pulleys to get your speed, as to just turning a dial to adjust your speed. Again, it's not necessary, it's just a nice to have. So, you know, for $400, you can pick up a nice lathe that'll do pretty much everything that you'll do as a beginner pen maker without too much drama. You know, I turn all my timber on this, I turn all my acrylics, all my epoxy resins, all that sort of stuff. They all get turned on this lathe. It's the only one I've got, and I've been using it constantly for the last 3 years. I couldn't tell you how many pens I've turned on it, but pretty much every day I come home from work, I turn a pen on this lathe. So it's had a fair workout. It's still going quite strong. It's not having any issues, anything like that. So it's definitely a well-built lathe. Now, there's a few companies, Carbotech are not the only ones that have this. Timbecon make one or sell one, a Sherwood brand that's very similar. I forget, there's a couple of others. There's other brands in Australia. You can go for a jet lathe, a little bit more pricey, probably slightly better quality. I think Laguna, Carbotech are just selling Laguna now as well, so they make some, but again, a lot more pricey, a lot better quality lathe, that sort of stuff. You're looking realistically, once you move away from this particular one, you're starting to look at around $1,000. It's a big price jump. So, this is a great lathe to get you started. As a hobbyist, I highly recommend going with these. All right. From there, the next thing you're going to really need to do is get yourself some turning tools or some chisels. So, most places you can go and buy a complete set of chisels in one hit, couple of, nearly $1,000. Don't do it. My advice is don't buy a complete set of chisels. You won't use half of them. When I first started out, I had chisels. I had these really old set of chisels that I had. They're just high-speed steel, nothing special about them at all. These are the 3 chisels I use constantly. You need your roughing gouge, to make your piece round. A scraper to get your, pretty much take it from round to that next level. And this one's actually a skew. Now, to use a skew properly, it takes a lot of practice, a lot of technique, learning that sort of stuff. But it does have a nice, large, flat, sharp edge on it, and it helps to get that final shape. Again, as I say, you can go out, you can spend a lot of money on chisels, you can buy really expensive chisels, but if you're just starting out, get what you can afford and get the basics. Another tip is places like Facebook Marketplace, those sorts of places, people are selling them secondhand all the time, and there is nothing wrong with them. You can buy some really good quality chisels for a quarter of the price of what you would buy brand new ones. So have a look. If you're starting out, you can quite often find some there. You can go right up. I now use this tool, chisel, as my main one. It has a carbide tip on the top here, which is interchangeable. That sort of stuff. That is now my main go-to tool that I use all the time. But again, I didn't start out with this. I started using the other ones first, and then I built up to that one. The other thing is with your chisels, you're going to have to sharpen them at some point. So strongly suggest that you can sharpen them with a file. It's a cheap, easy way. Buy a diamond card, that sort of stuff, that will get you started. Even Bunnings or any of them, you can buy a sharpening block to sharpen them. That's how I started sharpening. Plenty of YouTube videos that will get you started on all that sort of stuff. It's one of those things you'll have to start out, work out what's best for you. Don't overspend, because by the time you buy your lathe, there's $400 on your lathe. If you haven't got chisels, you're going to have to spend some money on your chisels, up to $100. There's your $500 straight up, and we've only just scratched the surface. We haven't even gotten anything further. So from there, you're also going to have to buy one of these. These are called mandrels. For most of your pan kits, you're going to need something like this. All right, it has a Morse taper end on this bit that fits into your headstock. That's what turns. It uses a rod down here with a screw on that holds your pieces. These are 3 different types of mandrels that I've got. They all work slightly differently. This one's just a rod with a threaded end. You see it has a knurled nut that goes on. You put all your bushings on, you tighten it down, holds it in place. This one here is adjustable. You can undo this nut here, slide the rod in, so if you're doing slightly smaller pens, it fits on. This one here, again, it's just a rod with a Morse taper end, goes into your headstock. It comes with this little adapter here, or this is called a mandrel saver. That just slides on over the end to hold your work in place, and that's how that works. You need a mandrel because every pen kit that you buy has these brass tubes in it. Alright, so those brass tubes are what holds the whole kit together. Everything you need to make the pen comes in this pen kit. Alright. Now, along with the pen kit, you'll need these little steel pieces here. These are called bushings. They come in all sorts of different shapes, sizes, depending on the pen kit that you're going to make. These go on your mandrel in between the brass sleeves that have the piece of timber on it. This is what gives you your guide as to what you're going to cut down to when you make your pen. That'll give you the size that the ends need to be where all the components fit together. And we'll go through all that on another video later on down the track, but it just give you an idea. You'll end up with lots of these if you keep going, because every different style of pen kit that you do will have a different set of bushings. All right. The mandrel saver goes in your tailstock. What that does is as you tighten down, it keeps your mandrel nice and straight. So if you put pressure on it, you're not likely to bend it, that sort of stuff. These other two here, you can use a mandrel saver on them. However, most of them, you put your live center or you put the other end tailstock in this part and you hold it on tight. That keeps it level. The issue with these is a larger chance of bending this rod. Once this bends, that's it. You may as well throw it away and go and buy another one. You can replace the rods on some of these. So like this one here that has the nut, you can buy a new rod, replacement rod, that sort of stuff. The others you can't. This one here is actually my favorite. It was the first one I started with, and the reason it's my favorite, my preferred one, was it came in this kit. It came in a box like this. In the kit you got your mandrel saver, a 7mm drill bit, and all your bushings for what's known as a slimline kit. So a little bit more pricey, but it gave you everything you needed to get started in one kit. All right, so you're only outlaying that one bit. Again, it's up to you how much you want to outlay. Now, I can't remember how much that kit was because it was about 3 years ago that I bought it. Bought it through Carbotech from Penn State Industries in the US. All right, so that gets you your pen kit now is on your lathe, you've got your chisels, that sort of stuff. We're still not quite ready to turn anything yet. So the next thing, or another thing you're going to also need to look at, is you have to drill your medium. So if you're working with timber, which to me is the best way to start out, you're going to need to drill out your piece. So your stock of timber is going to look something like this. This is how you can buy your pen blanks from most turning places, that sort of stuff. It's just a 20mm by 20mm square by about 150 to 200mm long piece of timber. Most places that sell turning supplies for pens will sell a whole heap of these ready to go. All you need to do is cut it and drill it to your size. So to cut it, easiest way to get started is a hacksaw like this. Simple, quick, easy, really cheap. All right. If you've already got a timber saw, great. If not, I think this cost me maybe $20 from Bunnings. All right. It's just got a blade, okay, because you'll need to cut. You need to cut this down to about this size, as you can see. All right. And for a lot of pens, you'll need there'll be two pieces. So like I said, in this kit, you've got two brass tubes in there. There's two parts to the pen. There's the body and the top, or some pens will have a cap and a body, that sort of stuff. All right. So you'll need to cut that in half, so you'll need some sort of saw. You can buy a really cheap little vise to hold them into. Stanley make one that you can get from Bunnings. I think that costs about $30 or something, just to hold it. Or you can just use a clamp and clamp it to the bench, a clamp like this, clamp it to a bench top or something, makes it nice and easy to cut. You just want to hold it, all right? So we're going to have to drill a hole into our piece of timber to put our brass tubes. Now this is one that I've done before. You can just see in there's a brass tube running down the center. I've glued that in already. This one's one that I'm going to turn a bit later on. To drill your hole, as I said, you're going to need your drill bits. Alright, so as I said, that mandrel kit that I got, that came with a 7mm, something like this one, 7mm drill bit already in it. Makes it nice and easy, you don't have to go looking. So you're going to need to drill out your pen body. Now every pen kit or style, they're going to be different sizes as well. So if you have a look on my whiteboard here, this is every kit that I have with every drill bit size already listed out. Some will be in metric, some will be imperial. Drill bits are pretty easy to get hold of. Most places like Total Tools, Bunnings, Sydney Tools, Mitre 10, any of those places you can get majority of the drill bits. Some of the odd sizes are going to be a little bit harder to get. Some of the kits coming out of the US have an odd imperial size or an odd metric size that you'll have to buy. You'll have to go to a specialist like Total Tools to get those odd drill sizes. Or a lot of the pen kit suppliers will also sell the drill bits. Nothing wrong with them, that sort of stuff. I've just found that most times I can pick it up from Total Tools or Bunnings just that little bit cheaper. So just to save yourself a bit of money. Plus it's a little bit more convenient. If you can go to Bunnings or Total Tools, they're usually within a convenient location. You can just duck around and pick it up when you've got time. Now to drill it, you've got pretty much a couple of options. If you've already got a drill press, great, makes it nice and easy. If not, you can either, when I first started out, I already had this guy, used to drill my bits out with this, no real dramas. However, you have to be reasonably accurate and straight. I'm terrible, I can't drill a straight hole to save my life. So I lashed out, and for about $40 I think it was, maybe a little bit dearer, I bought this. It's called a Jacobs chuck. Now this will go into the tailstock of your lathe, so just into here. Uses that whole Morse taper piece. It's again friction fit, so once it goes in, friction will actually hold it there. It's a nice tight fit and it'll stay in place. Put your drill bit, no different to a normal drill. Put your drill bit in there, tighten it up with a chuck key, start drilling. The difference being to drill on your lathe as to a normal drill is we're going to spin our work rather than the drill bit. It's no real difference. It's going to drill exactly the same. It doesn't matter really to the drill whether it's spinning or it's standing still, as long as something is spinning that to cause the hole. To do that, you're going to have to hold your piece of work though. So here's another cost. On your lathe, you're going to have to buy a chuck. All right. Now these chucks, I think it's about $100 and something for this chuck. It's only a smallish one. For Australian lathes, you'll have to buy the adapter for the thread to go on the headstock. So it was about another $30 on there. All right. So that's a start. Then they do come with 4 jaws, and you can start with the 4 jaws. I did. I didn't have these straight away. These are special jaws for pen turners. They hold the work nice and tight. So it just sits in like so. You tighten it up, holds the work, spins it. Again, they were about $60 to buy these pen jaws. All right. This whole setup is a really good investment if you can go that far. If not, I said go the battery drill the holes out. It works. I said for the first probably 12 months, that's how I was doing them. Just like that. All right, so we've set up, we've drilled our holes. We've got all that. We're almost ready. So The next thing is, I guess, you're gonna have to glue the tubes in. They need to be glued in. Couple of different ways you can do that. I highly recommend this Gorilla Glue. This is what I use all the time now. It's clear, so it doesn't affect anything. It has a slight expanding property to it, so once it's on the tube, you put it in, it'll over the drying period, it'll expand, fill up any small holes or gaps that might be in the timber, that sort of stuff. Takes a little bit longer to dry, but it also gives you a little bit more working time to get it right. You can use super glue. These are two different types of super glue that I use, same brand, just different thicknesses. I started out using super glue. It's all right, but the problem with super glue is it sets so fast. If you muck it up, you don't get it in properly, you get distracted. The tube won't go all the way in, or it's in too far, or something like that. And there's a higher chance that you're going to have issues. So it works. The other problem that I found with super glue, or as the Americans call it, CA glue, is that it's brittle. And you can, when you're turning at times, the glue will actually break and it'll come apart and the tube will come out. Or sometimes when you're pushing it together, it'll come apart. The other thing you can do is things like 5-minute Araldites. 2-part epoxy. I have used that quite extensively as well. It is really good. Again, you've got about 5 minutes of working time, so remember, once you mix it, and you've got to make sure if you are going to use epoxy, it's got to be equal parts. So exact amount of part A and part B, otherwise it doesn't get the right bond. The problem with the epoxy or the Araldite is it's temperature dependent as well as to how quick it's going to go off. So warmer weather, it's going to go off quicker. Colder weather, it's going to take a bit longer. And you've got the mess afterwards that you've got to clean up because you've got to mix it, all that sort of stuff. So I do still use it occasionally to glue together, but not that often anymore. So we've glued everything up. Again, I would still recommend the Gorilla Glue as the go-to for it. It takes a little bit longer to dry. As I said, I like to leave mine overnight. I'll glue up a few of them, leave them overnight to dry before I go any further. All right. So the next part, before we can put it on the lathe, as you can see, this piece of one that I've got here, you can see it's got this cutout piece in the end. So when I cut my blanks, I cut them a little bit longer than what the tube is. And we'll go into that again later. But then we need to flush it, or flush our timber or our medium level with the brass tube. We need to do that so that when we put everything together, piece it all together, there's no gaps, it works, everything's a nice, close, even fit. There's a few ways you can do that, however, and this is probably the one part within the pen community where a lot of people are so divided about how you do this. So you can sand them back till they're flush, but you need to make sure that your timber is all square, that sort of stuff. The way I started, the first way I learnt was with this little guy here. This is called a barrel trimmer. All right, comes in this handy little kit. Inside the kit, there's all these different size rods. All right. Comes with its own Allen key, and it comes with a set of instructions on how to use it, that sort of stuff. All right. So pretty much all you need to do with these, you throw this in your drill or on your lathe into your Jacob's chuck. This part here goes inside your tube. What this does is it actually cleans out the brass tube as it goes through. So if you've got any glue residue, anything like that inside the brass tube, as that spins, that'll clean it out. Okay, these teeth around here, they're going to cut away your material off from the outside. Now the idea is the rod going inside your tube will hold it square, so as you cut away that timber, it will cut that square to the tube. Sounds great, works well. The issue you have is you have to be really careful that you don't go too far and end up chewing away some of your brass tube. Now, a lot of these pen kits are very, you don't have a lot of tolerance or give on the actual length of the pen kit. So it has to be a set length. So if you start taking away too much brass tube, then all of a sudden the pen's not going to go together properly or the way it should have been, and you may as well throw away that piece and start again. All right, so again, I still use it. I still use it today. I do have my disc sander that I also use. However, I haven't finished setting it up properly. I just need to set it up a little bit better to be able to sand these back. And there are some great YouTube videos on how that's done. I still use this. I find this probably one of the best ways to do it. Now, you can buy this kit, again, it's not that expensive. I think it was about $40 or something like $30, $40. I've had it for a while. The teeth on it, they will need sharpening after a while. However, we'll go through that at a later date. Alright. So as you can see, it's not a cheap hobby by any means, but it's probably not that expensive to get into. I reckon we're probably up close to about, to get all that so far, we're probably up getting close to about $700. Alright. Some things you can do later. As I said, you don't have to get everything straight away, like the chuck, the drill, or the Jacobs chuck, the actual chuck for the lathe, that sort of stuff. You can probably hold off on getting them straight away. Turn a few, see how you go, that sort of stuff. You know, do it the cheaper way. Alright. So from there, the next thing is we've turned our pen down. We've got it set to a nice good size, one that we're happy with. Now, the next thing you're going to need to do is, once you've done that, you need to finish it. So you're going to need to sand it down. Now, you can buy a box of small strip sandpaper from most of the turning supply places. It's a great way to get started if you don't have sandpaper already. It's pretty much what I started with, and it's a good kit. But I found over time, the more pens I did, the quicker I went through it, and it just wasn't cost effective for me. But again, it's a good way to get started. Good way to, if you're just starting out, to have it all in a nice little box. I don't have any anymore to show you, but they come in a nice little box, all set out, ready to go. So it makes it nice and easy. I now just go to Bunnings, I buy the huge roll of sandpaper. You can buy them online from a guy by the name, or has the business, the name The Sandpaper Man. He's really good response as well. Just buy the bulk rolls, that sort of stuff. Now, I start sanding mine at about, depending on the timber, some of the harder timbers, I'll start on a coarser grit. Now remember, sandpaper, the smaller the number, the coarse the sandpaper is. So as the number gets bigger, so 120, 240, 400, 600. So the bigger the number, the finer the sandpaper, the less material you're going to remove. So if you're not confident sanding, don't go for really coarse sandpaper straight up. You're going to remove your material really, really quickly, and you're going to leave really, really deep scratches in it. So again, with most timbers, I start at about 120 and get it down to a nice flush level to where I want from there. And then I'll jump down from there to 240. Then I'll jump to about a 240. I'll probably jump to about a 400. And quite often I'll finish at 400, maybe go to a 600, whatever. The best bet to start with is just go with a natural timber finish. It's nice and easy. You're learning, play with that first. There's a lot of products on the market for timber finishes. Two of the ones that I use, I'll use U-Butte polishers. These are really good. Again, this is an Australian product, Australian brand. I try to only use Australian products, brands where I can, unless I can't get it. This Triple E Ultra Shine is an abrasive start, so that will start off where your sandpaper finished, if you want. So it'll still have some abrasive properties to it. If you read the instructions, it tells you that. Then the Shallow Wax just gives it that last little, it's a friction polish. It'll give it that shine right at the end. Now you do have to be careful with this. Make sure you read the instructions, and hopefully we'll go through, I'll do a video, I'll use these products and show you how I use them. The other product that I've just started using, I've just come across, is Australian products. This Custom Grit from Custom Creations by Scott. It's amazing stuff. It's a 2-part. Again, it's abrasive, really good. You got to step 1, you put that on, follow the instructions, then you do step 2, comes up with a really, really nice shine. Absolutely brilliant stuff. So that's 2 different ways you can finish it. I would strongly suggest you going with that to start with. The next finish that I put on pretty much all of my pens now is using the super glue, or as the Americans call it, a CA finish. By the way, it took me a while to work out why, or find out why they call it CA. It's called CA because that's the active ingredient in the glue. Anyway, I use a 2-part. I use a thin and then a medium to do all of my finishes on especially timber pens or anything that's a bit porous. It gives it that nice gloss finish at the end. Again, I'll do a couple of videos with how I do my CA finishes, give you all my tips, tricks, everything that I've learnt, the do's, don'ts, all that sort of stuff in another video. That's pretty much about that. So we've got it finished, we've got it sanded, all that sort of stuff. Now we need to put it together. We need to take it off the lathe and we need to put all the components together. One of the big things, every pen kit that you buy will come with a set of instructions. I actually have kept all of my instructions for all of my pens that I've done over the time. I still refer back to them every now and then. You'll learn there's a couple of kits that you'll do regularly, or most of, that you'll do it. Over time. But I still refer back to my instructions every now and then. Just occasionally you'll forget what drill size, or you'll just forget certain components have to go in first, otherwise the pen kit doesn't go together. So little trick, keep all your instructions, don't throw them away, have them handy, ready to get hold of. A couple of the pen suppliers have them electronically, so it makes it nice and easy. You can get them from them, download them. A couple others, the instructions will come with the pens, that sort of stuff. So they're there, use them. Don't try and do your first few without the instructions. As I said, I still use them today, and I've been doing this now for 3 years. One other little thing on the subject of keeping stuff. Every different style pen kit that you buy will have a different set of bushing. All right. This is just one container that I use that has all of my bushings in it. Big hint, as soon as you get them, find a container, find some way of storing them like this, because none of them have anything written on them. Once you take them out of the little bag, they will not have anything written on them to tell you what kit they go to. All right, engrave on them if you're good at engraving. I just use this. I found this works for me. Every different kit is in here, labelled, ready to go. As you can see, I've lost one label, fell off when I moved from Perth to Sydney. I don't remember what kit that goes to. I will work it out eventually. It's obviously not one that I've used for a while, but I will work it out, and then I'll relabel it. That's probably one of the biggest tips if you start getting into this and doing different ones. just keep them in a locked container, or a locked up sealed container so you can't lose them. You don't want them ending up on the floor so you can't find them, or don't know what pen they go to. Alright, now you need to put the pen together. Now I use a pen press. It's pretty simple little device. You can buy these, they're about $80 to buy. It just has a lever that pushes this rod, sit your kit in here, and just press it together. This is all adjustable. Again, these are great tools to use, and if you're going to do quite a few of them, definitely invest in it. However, you don't need to do this to get started. When I first started out, this is what I used. I just used this clamp. It's nice and easy. Put your kit between here. You've got your handle, squeeze it together. It goes together that way. These ones I've got here, they're just about had it. I've done quite a fair bit of work on them. You can get these from most of your hardware stores, that sort of stuff, really reasonably cheap. I think you can get these particular ones, I think were about $20 for a set. Like you get 2 in a set, that sort of stuff. You can buy more expensive ones, but if you're just buying it to do this, then this is all you need. This will do the job just as well as anything else. You can buy a little vise. Again, I bought a Stanley vise. It's only tiny. I think it cost me $20 or something. I used that for a while. That didn't quite work out because the rubber got chewed up, and I went back to the clamp until I bought the pen press. But again, it's not something you need right out of the box to get started. You'll get through without it. So, alright, the last part. Okay, this is probably one of the most important parts of doing anything, really, when you're out in the workshop, wood turning, working with tools, and that's the safety gear. Let's face it, we only get one life, we only get one set of eyes, that sort of stuff. So you want to protect them as much as possible. Now, I've always turned using this face shield. It's I've had things fly off and hit the face shield, that sort of stuff. I would not start my lathe up to turn anything without this on. They're a little bit more pricey, but they are well and truly worth the money to protect, let's face it, this thing here, they're good. This plastic here is reasonably strong. It's replaceable. I've had this for quite a few years. I don't know if I can get this particular one anymore. However, you can get them from most places. You're going to protect your face from here. This part here is going to protect your head, because if stuff flies off, it's going to hit this and ricochet off and go elsewhere. It's not going to damage your face or anything. So they're adjustable. They sit on nicely. You got the sweatband there, that sort of stuff. All right. Worst case, if you can't afford something like this and you really want to get into it, at least get a pair of safety glasses, protect the eyes. It's as I said, you only get one. Over my life career in the automotive industry, I've had bits of shit in my eyes from grinding, all that sort of stuff. And sometimes I was still wearing safety glasses, but I definitely wouldn't do this without them. Depending on what you're doing too, a bit of hearing protection, either earmuffs, or the foam earplugs. You can buy packets of them reasonably cheap. It can, when you're cutting, the noise level and that sort of stuff can get quite loud. So, protect your hearing, that sort of stuff. And probably the other thing is your breathing. Now, with some of the timbers, you need to be really careful, because they can, the dust and that from the timber can actually lodge in your lungs and cause issues later in life. I use these most of the time now, or a lot of the time, working on stuff, but they work with a lot of resins and acrylics and that as well. So, the finer dust and powder from them, it's definitely worth investing in something a little bit, more pricey. Again, you can pick this sort of stuff up from Bunnings, that sort of stuff. Worst case scenario, use the old paper masks to stop the dust. But let's face it, we're getting used to wearing masks now, so why not? Just make sure they are a reasonable quality paper mask if you're going to get them. Don't go too cheap. Buy something that's going to actually fit on properly and stop that dust from getting in and around your mouth, that sort of stuff. So, that's pretty much about all there is. As I said, I hope this is giving you something to start with. As I said, you're probably going to be looking in the vicinity just to get started. If you need to buy a lathe, buy chisels, that sort of stuff, you're going to have to buy a mandrel. Your pen kits are reasonably cheap. That's probably the cheapest part of the whole thing, really. This particular kit here, this is classed as a slimline kit. Now, there's hundreds of different kits on the market. This one has copper. You can get them gold, black, red, green, blue. I think I've done pretty much all of them. This kit here is going to set you back about somewhere between $3 to $5, depending on what finish is on it. So that is the cheapest part of it. And as I said, there's about a dozen suppliers now in Australia that you can buy all them from. They ship online. There's some really good ones. I'll cover off some of them in a little bit, but you're going to be looking your lathe. So even if the cheapest lathe like mine, $400, your mandrel is going to be another, say, between about $40. You're going to need a drill of some sort if you don't have one to drill them out. So you realistically, you're going to be looking at about $600-700 outlay before you can start to turn anything. So, and I'm not saying this to discourage anyone, because I love turning pens, and I'm so grateful that I fell into it, because it has changed my life and what I do. So I would encourage anybody to get into it. Now, places like, as I said, places like Carbotech, Timbercon, Timber Bits here in Sydney, Hare and Forbes have lathes as well. Most of those places, they're all going to have your different tooling. They're going to have your lathes. All of them, you're going to be able to get most of those supplies from, at a pretty good price. To get your pen kits and your other turning supplies, there's Steve's Woodcrafts down in Melbourne. They're awesome to deal with. Williams Pens Turning Supplies in Queensland, they are really awesome to deal with. You've got P Square agencies over in Perth or within WA. They are really, really good to deal with. You can get some stuff from Carbotech. I found they're very hit and miss with their supplies. One day they'll have something, a week later you'll go into it and they won't have it for another month. So, it is what it is. So stick with I've found those three really are probably the main things. Mayama in Perth as well. They've got a fairly big range. Most of those companies are really, really good to deal with. And they'll get your stuff pretty easily. And if you go through, do Google search, you'll find them, you'll come across them, that sort of stuff. I'll try and link them into these videos and that sort of stuff, so that if you want to go and search them, you can find them, that sort of thing. Again, I hope that this is giving you a start point. It's encouraged you to get into it. As I said, I absolutely love doing this. I think it's the best thing I've ever done. It's only gone strength to strength. I love getting out to the markets and meeting people seeing, they're surprised when they see what I've turned. I love giving them to friends and family, although most of my family now have more pens than they can poke sticks at. But it's always good. It encourages me to think outside the box. I like to keep all my stuff in house and that sort of stuff. But again, if you've got questions, hit me up. If you want to know anything, again, just ask. I'm happy to share. I'm not going to keep any secrets to myself. There's nothing that I am not willing to pass on. I'd rather see people enjoy this passion than not enjoy it. That's pretty much about it. There really isn't much more. The next series of videos I'll try and do, whether it's next weekend or whether it's weekend after, we'll see how we go. I'll try and delve into the actual making. We'll start slowly. We'll go from very scratch. I'll start with a slimline. We'll start talking about the different kits and their intricacies and that sort of stuff. Then we'll cover some timbers that I use and which timbers I feel are probably easiest for a beginner to get into, which timbers to wait until you've had a bit more practice and then try that sort of stuff. It's and again, these are all my opinion of what I've learned. Other people will tell you differently and that sort of stuff. You need to choose what's going to work for you and what's right for you. So on that note, I hope you get something out of this. Hope you enjoy it, and I'll talk to you all again very soon.